So gaming in the late 90s would generally throw you into one or two demographics. You were either a Sony or a Nintendo kid. If you were a Sony kid, you obviously had a PlayStation 1, and if you were a Nintendo kid, it was the Nintendo 64. During that generation of consoles, before the Xbox came along and corporatized everything, consoles had much more exclusives, making your choice of purchase really define what type of games you were going to play. The PlayStation got Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy, and Tekken, and then Nintendo 64 got lots of great kids games like Super Mario 64, Yoshi's Story, and Banjo-Kazooie. Alright, I'm kidding around, but I'm just trying to highlight how vastly different the exclusive titles were between each console. Our family ended up getting a PlayStation, mostly because my dad wanted to play games like Gran Turismo and V-Rally, so that's what we ended up just getting. And as a result, I'd miss FPS games like GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, because I was busy playing other games like Medal of Honor, Disruptor, or Power Slave. Now look, I'm not going to get into a huge debate about which console is best, because that's like arguing about whether or not shirts are better than pants, and anyway, both consoles had their strengths and weaknesses. One thing I will say is that a lot of those older games haven't really aged all that well, and sadly your only option to playing them is either owning the console itself or dabbling around with emulators. Or you could get lucky and someone could repackage the whole thing and get it running on modern operating systems, which is what a guy named Kaiser has done for Doom 64. Now this port allows the game to be played with a mouse and keyboard at high resolutions and shows just how well a game can age when it's given a helping hand. So now that we're able to play Doom 64 in all its glory, let's talk about it, shall we? So, Doom 64 itself was an interesting game in that it was something of a sequel to the original Doom, but was developed exclusively for the Nintendo 64. Developed by Midway Games and id Software, it takes place after the events of the first game, as the military has flooded the Phobos base with radiation in an attempt to kill the remaining demons. You're thrown into the space boots of a marine sent into the station to kill everything that survived, and of course your entire team is killed in moments, leaving you all to your lonesome self. It's very much rehashing the story of the original game, but no one was ever expecting it to reinvent the wheel here. It was just the means of bringing the series to the new console. The story could have been that you're a drag queen killing demons at Mardi Gras and people still would have played it. It is for the most part the gameplay and mechanics of the original game with completely updated sprites and entirely new textures and level design across the 30 or so stages in the game. But what is most interesting about Doom 64 is that it almost beats the original Doom at its own game, at least in regards to the horror aspect. One of the first things you notice when playing this game is the sound design, which is just leaps and bounds above anything we ever got in Doom 95. Instead of these looping metal tracks, you get these low frequency, distorted, grungy industrial loops. At times it sounds like someone slowly scraping a piece of metal across a surface, or at other times it sounds like people quietly murmuring or chanting. It's the kind of sound design you'd see in a game like Silent Hill, and the level of polish and creativity here is just incredible, really giving the game a rich, horror-like atmosphere that was only ever kinda touched on in the original Doom. It's like your brain can kind of associate with the noise getting made, but can't really define what it is, really helping the nightmarish and hellish theme. It's not really for better or worse, and don't get me wrong, the music in the original Doom is incredible. Bobby Prince absolutely killed it with that soundtrack, but it's just worth noting that Doom 64 really took things in a different direction. Another thing is that the lighting is a lot more creative. Originally the lighting was either fixed or some kind of strobe or pulse light to give the environments a bit more atmosphere, but in Doom 64 they've really gone all out, using different colours to define certain areas and almost painting the environments with lots of different shades. If the game hadn't been held back by the limitations of the Nintendo 64, who knows how much more detailed this game could have been. The art style, however, is a lot more different to traditional Doom. It's much more gothic, more akin to what we got in Quake, not that this is a bad thing. Lots of castle-like structures with statues, gargoyles, and so forth. As you would expect, the enemies and weapons are largely the same from Doom, with some minor changes, and the lineup overall is a mix of Doom and Doom 2, with some enemy types curiously omitted. So you'll be fighting zombie marines, imps, and cacodemons, along with Mancubus, arachnotrons, and pain elementals. What's missing are the Revenants, Chain Gunners, and Archviles. For what reasons, I'm not all that sure. There's a new imp type in the form of a Nightmare Imp, which is a different colour, has something of a translucent body, and fires blue projectiles. Lost Souls seem to move faster now as well and have less of a delay between their charge times, meaning they can almost attack you relentlessly, making them even more of a pain in the ass. Hell Knights and Barons of Hell are much more common. Hell Knights in particular are very frequent, and seeing as their projectiles deal out some pretty serious damage, you want to deal with these guys first. And lastly, Cyber Demons make up the boss fights in the game, with the Spider Mastermind being unfortunately absent. Everything seems to function entirely the same as their PC counterparts, though I did notice that the Imps and the Pinky Demons seem to have less health than before. But it might also be the way weapons behave as well. The shotgun spread, for instance, seem to be less at longer distances, and there's a lot of minor differences like this that do pop up. On the subject of guns, there's no surprises here. You've got the pistol, the shotgun, the double-barreled shotgun, the chain gun, the rocket launcher, the plasma gun, and the BFG. They all make a return. The chainsaw has been updated visually, giving it 2 blades instead of 1, because why not? And then lastly, there's a new weapon in the form of a demon weapon. Now this thing fires out red lasers, which are upgraded through artifacts found in secret levels. With 3 artifacts, it almost becomes too powerful, if that makes sense, decimating even a tougher enemy type like the Baron of Hell in seconds. For this reason, I chose not to use it a lot of the time, also because it shares ammo with the BFG and plasma gun. But it is a justifiable addition where I guess they felt they had to include something new. All of these guns perform just as I remember them, though I did notice the double-barreled shotgun has a much faster reload time, making the normal shotgun redundant. Again though, not really a bad thing, just something I noticed. Level design is largely unchanged. There's lots of key hunting, pressing buttons, backtracking to new areas, and so forth. It's really just more of the same, and it's all good and it works. The architecture is great and the layouts are challenging, even though the art style is, as I said, more similar to Quake than it is to the original Doom. I guess my major issue with this is that it never really reaches that same level of carnage that it originally did in the old game. In the original Doom, those moments when you're up against a couple dozen enemies at once were common, you were usually backed into a corner with your finger firmly pressed down on the fire button. Doom Guy's portrait gritted his teeth as you just unloaded at everything coming at you, hoping they'd all die before you ran out of ammo. These moments were common and they're what I think of the most when I think of the old Doom. However, in Doom 64, this kind of thing is a lot more rare and you're often only ever dealing with a handful of enemies at once. Now I don't know if this was again because of the limitation of the Nintendo 64, like they couldn't handle too many enemy placements or whatever, but it does mean the game does feel a lot slower than it should at times. There's often just not enough of the old ultra-violence to really compare, which is at the end of the day the only reason why the original Doom still beats Doom 64 as a shooting game. And this is really my only complaint about Doom 64 on the whole, because otherwise I just can't find any way to fault it. It is hard for me to review it objectively or even to review it as a Nintendo 64 game because my only experience with it is this port, which is by and large fantastic. I mean, I can see issues arising with the Nintendo 64 controller or other problems that the console might have had, but running it in this repackage, playing it with a mouse and keyboard and all that jazz is a near flawless experience, and it manages to capture all of what made Doom great and keep it feeling fresh with a new setting and overhauled visuals. I'd really have no problems recommending this port to anyone. It is, as I said, retaining everything that made the original Doom so good, and it offers up its own brand of challenge and takes a spin on the formula. And now thanks to Doom 64 EX, you can rip and tear in full HD. Awesome.